Cyberpunk has got to be one of the most captivating pieces of media you could ever consume. From its world building to the themes and tropes surrounding this dystopian future, one cannot help but be immersed. Though the beauty of Cyberpunk, and the one thing that sells CDPR's 2077 indefinitely, stems from the various characters you encounter along the way. The cast alone has literally carried this franchise through thick and thin due to character development and how relatable these characters are. They just hold you by the throat. That doesn't make sense. How are these said characters so captivating? A simple question, but for the longest time, I haven't been able to articulate my thoughts to answer that one simple question. I see all these subreddits dedicated to particular characters, full of fan art, cosplays, memes, and even more. I've seen a literal 30-minute video essay solely dedicated on why they love Panam Palmer. Why do these fanboys...
I love you, Panam. You know that, right?
Panam Palmer is my second favorite Cyberpunk character.
Yeah, you guys are right. Yeah, she's
Panam Palmer has been powerfully woven.
No, fanatics, including myself, love these characters so much.
SpongeBob's house, SpongeBob speaking.
I'm over here stroking my I got lotion on my right now. I'm just stroking my I'm horny, man. I'm a freak, man.
Well, it's all due to the fact that they are very flawed in their nature, yet CDPR allows this flawed cast of misfits to flourish, to be relatable and develop as you spend more time with them, in turn making them feel real. That last bit probably sounds cringe and cheesy, but let me explain. More often than not, Hollywood, or modern media, writes characters that are too safe, too bleak, call it black and white, call it soft modern. The good guys are good, and the flawed characters remain just that. When said flawed characters get a chance to redeem themselves, it's usually simply a way to get rid of that character, or they completely drop a crucial trait that made them special in the first place. The protagonists are almost these perfect little creatures, and the writer tries its best to tell you how perfect they are every second they get. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but when they do have their faults, it's usually the smallest and they aren't actually there. There's always this external factor, a third party, that always causes a character to do bad things. Basically, I went on a bit of a tangent there to point out the fact that we rarely see characters that actually fuck up and see them get developed. Scouring the internet, having a surprisingly diverse set of opinions, all of which have their own merit to a degree. But there seems to be this growing fanatic mindset that since they admire a character so much, they can never do anything bad. What if Kerry is an asshole? It doesn't mean he isn't a good character. He can also be a caring friend, loyal. I make this video to highlight the flaws of some of your favorite characters from the game, not to put them down, but to further understand them and appreciate CDPR's writing in general. Panam Palmer is passionate, strong-willed, courageous, but she is very impulsive. Admittingly so, sometimes outright repulsive, a straight-up gonk that never thinks before acting. If Rogue did not have a soft spot for Panam, she wouldn't have met her personal Atom Smasher, that is V. There could have been countless times where, hypothetically speaking, she would have been just another tragic story from Night City. Good thing, V was always there to help her out. She proudly waves this hard-headed, impulsive way of thinking, which at first makes her character fun and lively, but once you consider the implications and outcomes of her actions, you start to see her problems well within. She rushes in to take revenge on her old partner. In a hideout full of Raffins, with her current set of gear and cybernetics, she wouldn't have lasted 2 seconds in there by herself. Countless times where her clan could have fallen apart because of her own doing. Good thing V was always there to help her out. Instead of giving her clan a heads up that she was gonna EMP an AV in the Badlands, she continues the job unrehearsed. Even though Mitch and Scorpion were specifically ordered not to help her out earlier in a job, it was still her responsibility to disclose this information to her clan, especially knowing that they patrolled the area. This inevitably ended up in one of her best friends losing their life. She digresses Saul, or wanting to quote-unquote sell out to Biotechnica. But remember, it's all for their own safety. Saul was kidnapped by the Wraiths and would have remained to be so if V wasn't there to help out Panam. Who knows what would have happened if V wasn't there to help raid the Militech convoy and steal one of their tanks. A tank that was super effective, but a very temporary solution for their safety. And again, with that said tank, they would have been easily overwhelmed by the Raffin shivs. Also, what happens now when Militech decides they want to go after the ones responsible, the Aldecaldos? Can V help her this time? It's almost like she knows this simp, steadfast, desperate soul trying to smash will always be there to fix her shit.
Good night, V.
Good night.
Deep down, Panam is someone who just hates the system. Being in this dystopian future, it isn't very hard, but she has this pattern of practically digressing all of her own peers just because. Rogue clearly has a soft spot for her, and she sends you to Panam to help her out. So how easily does she turn Rogue's help, your help, down because of her indifferences? If V was not in this life or death situation, they probably wouldn't have pushed him in. Who am I kidding? So after all of these hypotheticals, the same impulsive behavior amplifies the relationship with the character because, romantic or not, for the first time in her life, she plays it more safely with dealing with the likes of V, which tells us that she is in fact sincere about her relationships and tells us that her character has the capacity to grow. All in all, making her character feel ever evolving, like she is real. That sounds weird as fuck.
In our willingness to be boss, in our hunger to buy.
Kerry Eurodyne is interesting because for the little time spent with the character, he has got to be one of the more complex companions you meet in the game. All in all, almost the exact opposite as the others. Unlike most of the companions, Kerry supposedly has it quote-unquote easy. He's got all the wealth in the world to live forever if he wanted to. What possible problems could he really have? Well, the game tells you immediately upon meeting him. Kerry is stuck in his Ouroboros. He knows he shouldn't, but he keeps devouring a part of himself, stuck in this endless cycle of self-destruction. He has his narcissistic highs and ultimately followed by feelings of emptiness, irrelevance, and loneliness. This inevitably ends in him doing something terrible or self-destructive. He's not just a bum by any stretch of the imagination. To get where he is, you need to be somewhat intellectual, which at first makes him all the more annoying. He needs that instant gratification or else he just feels empty inside. Being as old as he is, he still measures his self-worth by his success, never realizing he is already revered as a rock legend. And even after agreeing a tour with Uscracks, he admits he still doesn't like their sound. But again, he fathoms that immediate relevance, so anything for clout. He is so blinded by this potential relevance that he ultimately damages his own brand, his own life, which just fulfills his insecurities even more. He once had a wife and kids, and this just makes you wonder what they went through together with Kerry. He meets him for the first time and he is suicidal. The writer makes it very clear that V and Uscracks was essentially a very temporary solution to his mental health, that this dependence on people to be happy is unhealthy. And even in a new Phantom Liberty ending, we see Kerry quite satisfied, not knowing fully well if he has finally learned to love himself, or maybe he was just gratified, doing a big gig. Sometimes it makes me a little unsettled that we never got to see a proper resolution to his problems, but once again we are treated to CDPR's very realistic type of writing. I went on a bit of a tangent there, but it's not to say that Kerry has no redeeming qualities. In fact, everything is just amplified. Out of all of the companions in the game, he was the only one who actually stays for V. And even in a new Phantom Liberty ending, platonic or not, he is the only companion that actually, again, never abandons you. I'll admit, it feels a little bit artificial, but he makes an effort to accommodate V, even though he is clearly in this high. Kerry is probably the most loyal companion in the game. Kerry is a complex character.
Life in the city, hard to get by. Neon lights guide me underneath the sky, rooftop stores.
Judy Alvarez is kind of a gonk. I say this not to take away from her mechanical prowess. Her skills in braindance editing, her knowledge of vintage tech is held in high esteem, that even, for whatever it's worth, Johnny Silverhand acknowledges her skill. And to be fair, almost all of the romance options are somewhat gonks as well, but just think about it. All throughout your time spent with Judy, she straight up makes bad decision after bad decision. Furthermore, Judy is a character with emotional promiscuity, emophilia. She is someone who helplessly falls in love and she can't help it, which isn't necessarily a flaw by itself, but it only becomes a problem when she repeatedly falls in love for people who don't really have her best interests at heart. First Maiko, then Evelyn, and eventually V. Let me explain. Young Judy fell in love with Maiko, a once joy toy from Clouds. Maiko was implied to be borderline manipulative, which led to a pretty nasty breakup, one that made Judy look clingy, even desperate. Maiko eventually got promoted, and the two would be separated and later reunited in-game. Though it seems to be implied that she still somewhat cares for Judy, ultimately she ends up only helping us with the whole Cloud situation for a self-serving manner. She practically uses Judy the moment they reunite. Evelyn Parker was more so quote-unquote implied to be Judy's lover, so much so that CDPR even points this out in an interview. The game really tried its best to make Evelyn very likable for the little time spent with the character, but once you think a little bit outside of what's presented, things get a little sadder for Judy. Another joy toy from Clouds was blinded by ambition, so much so that she ultimately didn't care for anybody's safety, not even her own. She explicitly involves Judy in a heist worthy of being in the books, not thinking about what might happen to her accomplices, including her output, especially that she's practically crossing two very dangerous factions, Arasaka and the Voodoo Boys. Remember that Evelyn was only supposed to record the BD of Yorinobu's room, nothing else. Knowing how dangerous the Voodoo Boys are, especially because they already know of Evelyn's name, even if she found a way to escape, the Voodoo Boys could have went for everybody Evelyn knew to retaliate. Not to mention crossing Arasaka. She even tried crossing Dexter Duchamp, which I have no problems with, but this just sets another example of how much of a snake Evelyn truly was, that she ultimately even involves Judy in a very, very high-risk job. It's almost like she's got a thing for like joy toys or something, you know, like hopefully the next person she falls in love for isn't that bad. She eventually falls in love with V, a mercenary. A freaking mercenary. Are you kidding me, Jude? Someone who's probably done some pretty distasteful shit. Someone who has the whole city gone after their head. A literal walking red flag. And again, the game frames V the victim, the quote-unquote good guy. After all, they are the protagonist for the game, one that we the players control. So it's kind of hard to picture V being anything else but that. And again, I went on a bit of a tangent there to prove a point. Judy is kind of horrible at reading people. And oh boy, I'm not done yet. We just halfway there, boy. Johnny Silverhand might be an actual turd, but what he says about Judy is absolutely spot on. She is the type of person to jump out a window and be surprised when she's gotten all hurt. The way she handles the whole situation in Clouds further exemplifies how naive and short-sighted she really is. The whole gig was thought up purely through emotion and no brains at all. One that gets her friend Tom killed and inevitably everybody involved in Clouds hurt. Remember that Clouds is ran by Tiger Claws. Tiger Claws are backed up by none other than Arasaka. Considering that V doesn't side with Maiko, this whole job was doomed from the start. And doomed it really was. Don't even get me started on the prep work alone. Fitting dolls with combat AI sounds cool in paper, but really, she even explicitly mentions the fact that this will never beat experience. Not to mention the Claws have crazy weaponry, cybernetics, gear. They never stood a chance at all. This whole fiasco was just very short-sighted and purely done out of emotion. Judy cooked up this scuffed ass plan in like a couple of days and truly thought it would work. And of course, we still help her because, you know. My point is, Judy Alvarez is kind of a dumbass. But this is only really true because of the true nature of her character. Judy Alvarez has a good heart. She looks out for people that surround her, people that she barely even knows. She would argue with Susie Cube, the head of Lizzie's bar, because she wants to take in almost every stray doll she comes across with. Judy is almost like a symbol, a small glimmer of hope in a city full of evil. Hope that there's still good in humanity in this dystopian future. This is precisely just another example of why the characters of Cyberpunk are so captivating. They aren't perfect, they make mistakes, and not just silly-nilly, soft, modern, cookie-cutter mistakes like, oops, I'm clumsy, or I don't believe in myself, now I do. I'm talking about huge fuck-ups, fueled by strong emotions, accompanied by good qualities that ultimately you, the player, give these fictional characters the quote-unquote benefits of a doubt, because they just feel real.